Hey everybody, Fentress Flamingo here. I have got this cute little painting that I just did, and I thought about these trees and these trees, and everybody always asks me, how do you do those trees? How do you do those trees? We had a class the other night, and they asked me also, how can you do that? So one of the things I thought, I'll just stop in tonight since I can't be here in person with you. I'll post a little video about how I do these trees. So if you love this painting also, this is really fun and everybody looks at it and they go, oh my God, I can never do that. Look at this painting for a minute and I guarantee you can do this. Right here, this is a square. So we paint a square. Right here, we paint a triangle. This painting is mostly about squares and triangles and lines going like this, or this little cabin, okay? And you know me, I always show people, you draw your line, you draw your line, you draw your line. When I first started doing this, I thought, oh my gosh, it doesn't look right, doesn't look right. As soon as I grabbed some other colors, started flicking some other colors in there, I was like, oh my God, it's an adorable little cabin. So anyway, a triangle, a big square, rectangle. Almost everyone can draw a heart. Almost everyone can make an X and another rectangle here. So that's all that little cabin is, triangles and rectangles, okay, and lines. The trees, notice the shape is also a triangle. So you're gonna move your brush, but you're gonna keep that brush within a triangle shape. And I'll show you how I move my brush. And you got all these little guys back here, but notice a bunch of little triangles. A bunch of little triangles. Look at my brush just doing that. Bunches of little triangles. So this painting, we are gonna paint on the evening of January 27th. So if you're local, January 27th at the UT Ag Center with Jenna and Sarah. So you can check my Facebook or not the Ag Center, the UT Extension Center. Here in Fentress County. So you can check their page, or within the next couple days it'll be posted on my Fentress Flamingo pages as well. So that's what we're doing. We call it Little Love Lives Here. And after I painted it, I was like, oh, I just want to make a reservation there for like a weekend and just go and have a wonderful, chill weekend. So I'm going to show you how to paint some trees. Or I think I'm going to show you how to paint some trees. So I'll keep this over here, but look at my palette for a minute. So here on my palette, let me make sure we're on video. Yeah, let me make that a little bit bigger for you if I can. Oh, that's too big. Sorry about that. Let's try that. Maybe I'll be able to edit later as well. Wait, I don't like the way that is. That's too big. Okay, let's try that. Okay, and my hand sometimes gets in the way, but look at my palette. Never bigger than a quarter to start with. Never bigger than a quarter. This one is even smaller than a nickel. I might pour my paint on here a whole bunch of times, but when I pour, unless I'm doing a huge background, I do not pour more than that. I rarely mix my paint on my canvas. I let my brush do the work. So always remember that. You don't have to take, if you want to make light green, don't mix it up on your canvas. Put it on your brush and mix it. Don't mix it on your palette, mix it on here. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the trees in the background. So those trees in the background, I put some white here on my brush. I put some light green on this brush. Now, in order for your brush to work right, you have to brush the paint back and forth and work it into the brush. But see how I never go bigger than an inch? Because you could go across this whole thing. You're just wasting space and you're taking the paint off. You want to push that paint into the brush. Okay, so I have it pretty well, about 1/4 of an inch in there. So I'm going to pick up some more. The white corner into the white, the green corner into the green. White and light green, okay? And now I make sure it's lined up the same way, white and light green, just the same way I stroked it once, okay? So my paint is still on the brush, okay? So for right now, I'm just gonna take, and I'm gonna draw it on here so you can see, okay? So I'm just gonna have a little flat area, And then my brush is just gonna go up and down like this. That's all I'm gonna do. That was just a squiggly line. Remember I said mostly triangles? Okay, now I'm not gonna go on here and paint triangles, but I'm gonna let my brush do the work. I'm gonna put the green on top, and I'm just gonna squiggle back and forth. I may not, and see when it starts to drag like that, not enough paint on the brush, you just get more paint and you start again. Notice how as I smush, and you gotta use these words, smush, okay? Notice how as I smush, the colors just blend together on their own, okay? When you paint on a pad like this versus a canvas, it's a little bit harder for the paint to spread, so sometimes it just needs more. So I put a little more on my brush, and I clean up these kind of spaces now, and I just drag it in there. Just drag it in there if I want my edges a little cleaner. But for this kind of a tree, background, you don't need to do that. Now there's empty spaces down here. So now I put my green on the upside, and I'm just gonna drag across a couple of times, okay? And then I'm gonna smush that into there. Is it exactly all the way to the top of every one of those? No. Do I want a little neater on some of them? Yes. Do I want the other color sticking out behind there? Absolutely. Because if you look at my painting, I don't know, let me see if you can see this close up. If you look at my painting here, you can see there's some darks around the edges, there's some lights, it's mixed in there. I didn't paint every one of those individually. I let the brush do the work. Notice I'm using the big brush for this little tiny area, okay? So I'm gonna stop there for a few minutes and just let that dry. Now, those trees are in the background. The farther back it is away, the lighter it goes. So I might wanna take even a little more white and smush it in there with less green. And maybe I want to go over it one more time if I want them a little lighter. That might be a little bit too light, so I'm just going to flip my brush over because the green is on top and let some more of that green be in there. Am I agonizing over this? No. What are we going on? 2 or 3 minutes here? Okay. If I need to fill in the bottom a little more, go ahead. Fill in the bottom. Just smush, 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 smush. There's a lot of smushing here, okay? And if I want to drag across very lightly, if you go lightly, it gives it that foggy kind of look, okay? I'm barely touching. I hope you can see this. Okay, so there's one section. That's part A, okay? So I'm going to let that sit there. Now I'm going to switch to a little brush. If I was doing this bigger, like on this canvas, I would use this, what I call my medium-sized brush. And what I did was blobbing. That's a very important vocabulary word for painting. Blob, 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 blob. Blob, turn the brush different directions. Blob, 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 blob. That's what we're gonna do next. But because I made this smaller than on my painting, I'm gonna use the smaller brush. But I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. Now, I'm gonna take my white paint, okay? And I'm gonna use only white, because that was snowy, so we're doing snowy trees right now. So I have white paint, roll that around, you can see it, okay? And for this, you need a good amount of paint on there. You can't have it all perfect in a little bit of paint. So now I'm gonna start blobbing. And I blob in different directions, but just get some blobbing on there, okay? You gotta keep going back into the paint. Blob, blob, blob. You have to say it. It comes out better if you say it. I said it better the other night, okay? I'm gonna go all the way across, and I'm going quickly here. The reason I'm going quickly is because I wanna come back and I wanna mush some green into there. Blob, mush. Are you hearing these words? These are the most important painting vocabulary words. Now I'm touching a little bit of this green. I'm gonna put it over here next to my white because I don't want that dark green. And I'm gonna put let me show you. A little smush of white in there. Let me do that again so you can see. I touched a little green, I put it over here. I'm gonna get some more white in there. I want it almost white, but not quite that white. So just a little there. Just like, and I kind of do that dabbing and smushing versus mixing it and making it all perfectly the same. I don't want it all the same. I want all different colors. So now I'm just mushing, and here I make some tops. I leave those dark edges. I don't go over every single spot. I just kind of go around here. I like to have imperfect edges. Remember, this is way in the distance in the mountains. If you go for a ride in your car and you're looking up at mountains, can you see those edges of the leaves all the way up at the top of the mountains far away from you as you're driving? Can you? Heck no, you can't. So look at I mush, 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 okay? Now, it kind of looks like a little messy right there, but when you do the background of a painting, it's kind of how it is. It's in the background. Nobody sees all of that. If you are a realistic painter, you might not do this. This would be one simple layer. If I wanted to work on this more and make these trees more realistic, then I would build on what I have here. If I'm going down to a snowy background, like I did here, I might put a little more white down here with some bigger blobs down here. So it fades into the background. But again, notice I'm leaving some of those darks to show through. Okay? If you get too dark in one spot or too light in another spot, you just go put some more of the other color. Okay? So I'm just gonna leave that like that. And that is actually what I did here. I just left it alone. I did it with a little bit bigger brush so you can kind of see. But I always have multiple colors, some dark green on my brush, some white or lighter green, and that's how I work it, with the multiple colors on the brush, okay? I don't want, if I want this to look a little tiny, what I call crafty realistic in the background, then I have to have multiple colors back there, okay? So, and you see, I just keep playing. Blob, 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 smush, 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 okay? And you're not grinding your brush, it's a light touch, okay? So there's one little stand of trees, okay? Now, when I came up and I did this background group here, I did almost the same thing, but I'm gonna change it up a tiny bit. So I'm gonna go back to my large brush, and when I get my large brush, I've rinsed it off, or hang on, I'm rinsing it off, okay? But when you do this and you rinse it off, you have to make sure you get the water off this metal part and the handle of your brush, and most of the water out of your brush, okay? The reason is, otherwise you're gonna get all water in here and it's just gonna smush around and you won't ever get the variation of the colors. So I'm gonna do the same thing. This time, I'm gonna start with dark, and I'm gonna do some light also, just like we did before. But I went with a much darker color. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing. Okay, some trees. And again, I'm working on very dry paper. So when you work on very dry paper, you have to go in and out of your paint very often, because the paint just soaks into the paper. So do you see me keep coming back for more paint? Okay, so we got a couple of spots here, and I'll clean it. If I put more paint on the edge of the brush, I can get those dark edges. Okay, and then I come back in and I mush it a little more. Notice I did not get more paint. I flip my brush over and use the paint on both sides of the brush. So I get just some mushing. And again, this is for our backgrounds and acrylic paint. We just keep building layers. And you can go from very crafty painting like this to very detailed painting in acrylics by just building your colors and building, okay? When we do our paint nights, we do more of a, what we call paint and sip, or we do paint with, just hanging out in fellowship. You're supposed to be able to have a good time, talk to your friends. So we don't do realistic. We do more of crafty step-by-step paintings. And my hope when I do these with you is that you pick up some little tips and tricks every time, okay? And in time, you'll do exactly what I did. You'll get more brave and you'll try more things, okay? So I want my lines going up and I can see those streaks going across. So see me just dragging them up? Doesn't really matter. I got a little more white here, but see how much darker it is than that? But now I'm gonna switch my brush, and this time I'll use the medium brush and we'll see what happens. So remember how I said I did the mushing and blobbing? Okay, so I'm gonna go in here and you can see I kind of messed up my white, so I'm gonna scoop up that white and green right there, and I'm gonna bring it over here, and that's what I'm gonna kind of use. let me show you how I do it. I'm just kind of touching, I'm not mixing, just kind of picking up the couple of colors together. Okay, now here we go. Blobbing, irregularly. I turn my brush up toward the top of the tree, but then it's literally blob, blob, blob. That is actually what I'm doing. And again, do you see me trying to be perfect? Heck no. Because if I try to be perfect, I'm not gonna get that distant look. Now I just made a mistake. Instead of grabbing the dark green here, I grabbed this light green. Guess what? I'm gonna go right over those trees and put a little bit of that light green in there. Because if you do a few layers of this, that's what gives you that little bit of realistic. As I said, this is not a realistic painting, but the tones and the colors give you that realistic effect. So I get some more in here. I kind of mush on there. Now I'm back with that little bit of darker mushing, 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 mushing. Okay, just making some trees. See me turn my hand every so often so I get the point of my brush on the outside sometimes on the inside. I'm gonna do dark again, a little more light. I mush them together a couple times, but notice I'm not mixing that paint, okay? I'm letting the brush do the work here, okay? Again, irregular. I wanna see those darks and those lights in here. Okay, we'll get some more. Remember what I said, you gotta have plenty of paint. And I say this at all my paint parties. A lot of times people are like, it doesn't look like yours. A lot of times my answer is more paint. Put more paint. You could sit there all night if you don't have enough paint, and you could wonder, why can't I catch up with everyone else? Trust me, more paint. It's acrylic paint. We're not smushing it around with water. It's acrylic. Okay, so I'm picking up and I'm going down here. Remember I said triangle shapes? So each of these trees should be sort of triangular. So I'm blobbing big triangles. I'm running out of paint, so I'm getting some more. Blobbing my triangles, okay? First I swished them with that big brush to make the shapes. Now I'm filling them in the shapes of triangles. Am I being a perfectionist? No. These are background trees. I'm not trying to be a perfectionist, okay? We're background, we're crafty, step by step. That's what we're doing, okay? All right, so I feel like it needs I want like a little touch more of the lighter green in there. So again, I didn't wash my brush once during this whole thing. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little more of this light in here. If it's too much, I'll take it out. But again, it's a light touch. Maybe I'll just put the light on the left side of the trees. Maybe there's some sun coming from that way. And so maybe that's where the lighter side of the tree is, okay? We'll do that. Oh, look, they're overlapping up onto my other ones, which is fine. If they go right off the canvas, look over here. I went right off the canvas, okay? Guess what? It's fine. Okay, so there's some of that. We'll put a few little dots. Use up what's on your canvas. I mean, on your palette. So you see, I didn't have to mix. I didn't have to pull out tons of different colors. Now I'm gonna let those dry up a little bit. Now these that are down lower here, they're a little bit closer. So they have a little more detail. So that's why I chose to go a little darker. So now notice how I'm laying that brush sideways, okay? Because I want that sort of sideways look. I'm not pulling my brush at all. I'm only tapping, tapping, tapping. Tapping, smushing, blobbing. So I want a little more. So I do, some little paint that I don't mush and blend, because that gives you the suggestion that there are boughs and branches in there. But it's completely irregular. Okay, so a few of those in there. I want to do it on all of them since I started that way. And then I would probably do one more thing. Something fun to do on these. When you mix blues and greens, when you're doing these kind of, what do you call it? Can't think of the word. Like the fir trees, the evergreen trees. When you're doing these kind of background evergreen trees, sometimes there's blue in them. So I'll show you when I do the big tree. I'll show you how I do that. So you can see I'm literally just using the side of my brush when I do these little blobs, and I'm just blobbing with the side of my brush. Whether it's the teeny tiny brush or this medium-sized brush, but you saw that I started with the big giant brush. It literally is blah, blah, blah. And the braver you get to let go of control, the better they will come out. The other thing I do sometimes, and I'll grab my little brush for this, I still have some white on here. It's not perfect white, but it's white, okay? And I didn't ruin it totally. So again, I make sure I have plenty on there. I'm gonna give these trees a little bit more white, okay? Even though I just wanted a little bit more of that green on there before, put a little more white on these just for fun, okay? Okay, and the brighter and the more white on a painting like I'm showing here, the brighter and whiter you get, the closer it is. See how bright this white is, where these whites are kind of muted and blended into the green a little bit. So we're a little closer to the front, so we're a little closer to the foreground. So put a little more white on this. This is meant to be fun. This is fun art. We're not doing fine art right now. We're doing fun art. But guess what? Fun art develops into fine art every time you are brave enough to pick up a brush. So that's why I say, come paint with me. And of course, thanks for coming in on Flamingo Friday. And I'm sorry I'm not live this week, but I'm going on a little girls' adventure tomorrow. And you know what? Life with the girls is very important. So I decided I would give you guys a little recording for your Flamingo Friday instead of going live. Let me check the camera again, make sure we're still good and so you can still see everything. Make sure the camera is on. I believe it is. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this up close tree, okay? This one here. Now, we did these the other night, too. A bunch of us got together and painted at the pub this week, okay? I put a ton of green on there, and you're going to need way more paint when you work on this kind of paper because it does not have a super shiny finish. It doesn't have the gesso on it like a canvas has. So I hold my brush up straight, and I give myself, let's go over this way so it overlaps those trees. I give myself a line. That's gonna be almost the top of our tree. I'm gonna let it go up a little higher. So sometimes I start down lower. Did I worry about a perfect line? No. How do I make a line? I stand up my brush. I have that chisel edge on my brush. I barely touch the canvas, barely touch, and I just drag down, okay? No pressure. No pressure is the whole key. All right, now I need to get myself a little bit more paint. And this is where, on a close-up tree like this one, and this is just one way. There's 9 million ways to make a tree. But today, I'm showing you this way. So, I got a little dark, and I'm focusing on the corner of my brush, okay? The little tiny corner. And when I start up at the top, I'm gonna lean my hand this way because I want you to see I'm just touching. But when you really do this, try to stand your brush up. But I want you to be able to see it. So I'm hoping you can see this. So I barely touch. I turn my brush sideways and I'm barely touching with only the corner. And then I'm gonna zigzag back and forth. I don't worry if it gets too thick, but again, remember what I said a few minutes ago, barely any pressure, okay? Now, when I get where my brush is as wide as my top, and again, look at our triangle, okay? When my brush is as wide as the top, what you saw me do is I started with the bristles going this way, and then as I came down, I turned those bristles once it was wide enough. And now I just go from side to side and I go across. It's important to keep your bristles crossed with that center stem. If you angle them down, here's what you're gonna get, which is fine if you want this kind of tree, okay? And notice I was dragging, okay? Here, there's no dragging. It's working with the corner and rocking that brush back and forth with those bristles absolutely perpendicular, crossing that center line, and you just keep going. See the triangle developing? Don't go too fast or too crazy. Notice my bristles are not bending as they go down. My bristles are staying straight up. If you bend those bristles, look what you get, a big blob. And we might want that in a little while. But in the beginning, you're getting your shape, you're getting your color, you keep going back into your paint. See how I went right over those trees? Okay? And I'm gonna go right about there. I'm gonna fill in a little bit more, but not too much, and I'll show you why. Okay, so I filled in there. Some colors are lighter, some colors are darker. Now, here's where it's fun on these kind of fir trees to add some different colors. And every color green that you choose and every color blue that you use, look at the tiny little dot. That's all you need for these. Tiny little dot of paint. If you find out you need more, you just pour more out of your thing. I did not wash my brush. I'm just putting that blue on there. I'm getting it mushed in a little bit, okay? And I'm gonna go to the top and I'm gonna make some of those little dots up at the top. I don't wanna cover everything I did. Did you see me turn the brush? I went here. Now it's getting really dark there, which is okay right now. But I wanna leave some open spaces, not, maybe not all. But remember, I can come back with white, but I want that green to show through. I want to cover everything I just did, but I want there to be multiple colors in there, okay? Some green, some blue. Maybe you want all green. Maybe you want a lighter tree. There's a jewel green that I use sometimes, which is gorgeous. All right, now I did that. I'm actually gonna take a little bit of this lighter green right now, and I'm gonna put some of that in there. Now I blob a little bit harder. Notice I started at the bottom. I don't even pay attention to where I'm going because now I have my triangle. I'm not worried about it anymore, okay? And I just gotta make sure I keep mixing those colors. Give me some different colors. Oh, I almost went too far there before I turned my brush. Did you see that right there? Okay, I went way out there with the wide brush and I really needed to go like that, okay? And I go out there. Every one is different. Sometimes mine look horrible. Sometimes they look fabulous, okay? But I felt like I needed more paint on there. So I'm coming back in with some of the dark green again. And so when I pick up a color like dark green, I'm gonna go everywhere with it now. Okay, I'll give it some more light green in and around because I wanna fill this tree now. All right, now I'm gonna leave it for a minute and look at it and say, okay, not bad, not too bad, okay? You can have shape, you can have some going up and down, but mostly on this kind of tree, and again, this is a suggestion of a tree. It is not a fine, studied fir tree. Now, did you see me add white? I sometimes I do things automatically and I forget to tell you what I'm doing. But I added some white. Now I'm gonna go in here with this lighter color, okay? And what happens with this lighter color is it's mixing right on there with the wet paint. Now I gotta be careful when I get up here because I gotta remember to turn my brush. I'm gonna turn my brush. Now also my brush now isn't showing any more white because it all mushed in here. So it all blended to the darker color on my brush. You can see some light there. So if I wipe it off here and I touch the corner back into that white, it gives me a little bit more of that white for there and then turn it. So I've got some, okay? Now I'm not making all my snow just yet on my tree because I want to get those colors in there, but that's not half bad, okay, for a demo on a sketch pad. So I'm going to give myself some clean white over here, and I'm just going to get a little, and I'm going to, again, not clean my brush, but I am going to wipe this big amount of green off. Okay, so now there's not much paint on there. I'm going to get some white. I'm going to let it blend in a touch, get some more, blend it in, okay? And now this is going to show some snow now, okay? And you're just, I even have that brush tipped so that I'm not getting a ton on here. I'm just using that corner, okay? It's still a little bit blended. There's still a little bit, and they're like those lines are kind of perfect. If you mush a little more, they're less perfect. So mush, blob, remember the mushing and the blobbing, okay? So on this one, I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna leave that alone for a couple of minutes, okay? And when that dries up, then I will come back to that, and I guess I can do it, but what you wanna do, I want to do it to show you, but you want to let that dry for a minute. Actually, I have my heat gun right here, so pardon the noise. I'm going to blow this right on here and dry this up. If you use a heat gun, keep it a little away. Remember, acrylic is actually forms of plastic, and it dries permanent, and it dries hard. So if you go too hot with the heat gun, it's going to melt your paint and you'll see little bubbles in it. So you stay a little ways away. Use a hair dryer. They usually don't get hot enough. But that's pretty dry. Okay. And now, since that's pretty dry, I'm going to take this clean white paint and I'm going to use the side of this brush. So I get enough on there, I roll it around on there, smush it around on there, but notice I'm not mixing it with the green this time, okay? But I want to make sure there's enough paint on there, okay? Now, I want to put some pure white. That's what you do when your painting is dry. And when you take these pure whites and you put them on top, these are the little accents that bring your paintings alive. Now, is this a perfect one? No. Is this one I did over here a perfect one? No, but it sure was fun. Okay, so you just put some brights on there. And remember what I said? The brighter it is, like this, is when it's close to you. And see me going over those same spots a couple of times. And the reason I do that is because over the dark paint, sometimes it takes a couple coats, but I just do less as I go up, okay? So I focused on that left side of the tree, but I want to balance it a little bit, so I want to put some in other spots. And see how I'm holding that brush sideways so I get these longer kind of blobs versus dots. We'll do dots another night. I'll show you how I sprinkle snow, okay? But I do those kind of things. Some of you love glitter, so you could go ahead and put glitter after this is dry. Again, glitter when it's dry, okay? So I might do a couple coats of this, and so it stays bright white, or it becomes bright white. All right, so that is a quick Crafty Cheryl, Crafty Fentress Flamingo, couple of little trees, a little tree stand for the background. The farther it is, the lighter the color, the closer it is, the more bold the color gets. And guess what? It's Valentine's. You can make your trees any color you want. Maybe you want some big red and pink Valentine trees. Maybe you want some blue trees, whatever you want. So that's how you build a little texture to make some very simple painted trees that are super, super fun. So let me see if I can do a little close-up so you can see that a little better. Okay, and this one, you'll have to ask me questions and comments, and I promise I will answer all of the questions as soon as I'm back tomorrow evening. Oh, I'm a day ahead on you guys. Yeah, surprise. So this is our little Fentress Flamingo trees. I just wanted to share something with you for a few minutes since I couldn't be here tonight. So have fun. Try it. It's fun. Look at the brushes I use. I just have very simple flat brush, a round, medium-sized round brush, and you saw this little brush here. So those are my 3, and I focus on those because you can learn to paint with very basic things. The better you get, the more detailed you get, the more realistic you want to get, the different styles you want to get, then you begin to build your brush collection. But these are good. These are a good starting point for you. All right, so please do me a favor. Paint some happy little trees. I am going to tell you that when I did this, it really did make me happy. I played around with this last night, and I was inspired by a friend's painting. And I love the woods and I love cabins. And this was originally meant to be like a Christmas scene. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to make it Valentine's. And the heart, just for those of you wondering, blub, blub, blub. That's all I did to make my heart. So have a really happy Friday. Happy Flamingo Friday. And we will see you in person next Friday. If you have any questions, reach out to me. If you're local and you're interested in this painting or you'd like a kit, let me know. And if any of you want to do this painting online, out of state, my out-of-state friends, if you want to do something online with me, message me, get your group together, and we'll see if we can set something up for you. So happy Flamingo Friday, everybody. Have a great night.